And I said, man, this is what we got to start doing again. Now, thus, there are major differences. We have to recognize that. There are major differences in the Quran, such as that women are inferior to men. That's Surah 4. That men can and even should beat their wives in some circumstances. Also Surah 4. Belief in the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus is false. Belief in Jesus Christ as the Son of God is blasphemy. That's Surah 19. God wills moral as well as physical evil. We do not believe God wills physical evil or moral evil. And God does not love unbelievers. Third Surah. We do not believe that. God loves everyone. So what do we do? The differences between Islam and Christianity are prominent. Well, you got to go back to the root. Let's look at the first 400 years of both religions. That'll tell you an answer. Christians in their first 400 years were persecuted, did not have political power, and were peaceful. Muslims in their first 400 years were at war and converted through the sword, not love. That's why Islamic reformers who say we want to go back to true Islam go back to the first 400 years, which was jihad. And so we have to realize this. But you know what you really should go back? Should we go back to the first 400 years of religion, or should we really go back to what the Catechism said is our base core, Abraham? Abraham is really the beginning, and his faith was based on trust, not violence. Let's look at our next slide. Isaac and Ishmael, the two children of Abraham. One, Isaac, through Sarah, and the other, Ishmael, through a concubine, Hagar. Isaac became the Jews, and Ishmael became the Muslims, the wild ass of a man. We can start here because Abraham trusted God would spread his progeny throughout the whole world. Even if Isaac was killed, he trusted God, he'll find a way. So let's think about this. Abraham trusted God when God told him that through Isaac, who will become the Jews, your descendants will spread as far as the sands of the seashore or the stars in the sky. But he also said Ishmael, his lineage would spread far and wide. God says this in the Bible. Well, that's the Muslims. The Muslims proclaim they come from Ishmael. So this is interesting. Muslims would spread too. And they have. Do you know, I said this the other day, for the first time ever, there are more Muslims now in the world than Catholics. First time in world history. Today, there are more Muslims than Catholics. The gap's going to widen. Muslims have large families. They don't believe in abortion. We Catholics believe in abortion. We're not supposed to. I'm just telling you, when you're not living your Catholic faith, misguided Catholics believe in abortion, birth control, and small families. This gap is going to continue to widen. And the rivalry between the Jews who came from Isaac and the Muslims who came from Ishmael continues today. And their goal is to destroy the Jews. Now, I want to tell you something that I learned in my scripture class. Throughout history, many people have tried to destroy the Jews. You ever wonder that? Why is everybody after the Jews? You ever think about this? The Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Canaanites, the Muslims, the Turks, the Russians, the Nazis, the Muslims. Why is everybody after the Jews? I want to tell you something fascinating that Father Seraphim taught me. Always going back to Father Seraphim. Father Seraphim says Satan wants to destroy the Jews. I said, well, Father Seraphim, wouldn't he want to destroy all people? He said, specifically the Jews. I said, why? He said, because then Satan could call God a liar. I said, huh? He said, God told Abraham that through Isaac, the Jews would spread far and wide, more than the sands of the shore or the stars of the sky. So if Satan can destroy the Jews, God's a liar. So Satan's mission has been to destroy the Jews so that we can say God is a liar. This is interesting. Now, Father Seraphim told me this story. He said, do you know that Hitler had 10 henchmen that he handpicked to carry out the destruction of the Jews? They ran the concentration camps, the rounding up of the Jews, the slaughter of the Jews. And Father Seraphim taught me something unbelievable. He said when they went to execute the last of those 10, they were getting ready to hang him. And they put the noose on his neck. This was after World War II. And they went to execute this final henchman, Hitler's 10 henchmen. And as they put the noose around his neck, just before they executed, and I know I'm not going to pronounce this right, I never can, he yelled, Param. P-A-R-I-M. Param. And nobody knew what that meant. And a Jewish rabbi came forward and he says, this is a Jewish feast that goes back to the book of Esther. And what he says was in that book, an evil man named Haman, like Hitler, he had 10 henchmen to eliminate the Jews. And let's look at our next slide. This is Esther. Esther, who is a righteous woman, she foiled the plot and she reported it to the king. This is what the book of Esther is about in the Bible. And she reported it to the king. And on the feast of Purim, those 10 henchmen were executed in the Old Testament. So here you have Haman, who had 10 henchmen to wipe out the Jews. It's discovered, and they executed all of them on the Feast of Purim. Here you have Hitler, who found 10 henchmen to eliminate the Jews, and the last one is executed on the Feast of Purim. I went, whoa, this is unbelievable. These 10 henchmen. Now, we Christians are the ones that are persecuted because now, carrying on God's work, we continue to be the ones Satan pursues. That's why there's so many persecutions. That's why over 100,000 Christians a year lose their life for their faith. Now, the only options, because of this persecution, that you will never hear on the news, you will not read in the newspapers, you will not hear anybody stating, but I'm going to give it to you. It's called the truth. If you are a Christian living in Islamic territory, you only have a certain amount of options. 1, you convert to Islam. 2, you pay a huge fine to practice your faith if you are Jew or Christian. 3, you can become a slave. 4, you can leave the country as a refugee. Or 5th, be killed. That is the reality. People don't hear about, all we hear about on our news today is the century-old, horrible, wrongful European slave trade. It's all we hear about. It's what they teach in the schools. But I defy you to find one school that teaches you about the Islamic slave trade. Barbarossa, who was a Muslim, said that he took more slaves, Christian slaves, in one day than an entire year of slaves going to America. Think about that for a minute. This isn't my words. I'm not a racist. Please don't send me the letter calling me a racist. I am simply telling you that the Muslim Barbarossa himself said, I took more Christian slaves in one day than an entire year of slaves going to the Americas. But we never hear about this. The expansion of Islam, therefore, was directly linked to military success in jihad. But unlike jihad, Our crusades, which I talked about last week, were not to expand Christianity by force. It was to liberate the Holy Land and protect pilgrims, and not to allow them to be forced into slavery. So the crusades were a direct response to Muslim conquests of Christian lands. But I now want to get to the good news.